وصحبه ومن والاه أما بعد. We continue and we're up to page 179.
Chapter 6. Evil deeds and the da'i's role in preventing them. Whosoever from you sees an evil. Number 55. The Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, whosoever from you sees an evil, then let him change it with his hands. If he is not able to, then with his tongue. And if he is not able to, then with his heart. And this last one is the weakest level of Iman.
What we're going to be speaking about is al-nahy an al-munkar, preventing the evil. And we know that when it comes to da'wah, there's two aspects. There's al-amr al-ma'ruf, there's enjoining the goodness, and there's al-nahy an al-munkar, forbidding the evil. A lot of people, when it comes to da'wah, they like to focus on al-amr al-ma'ruf, enjoining the good. Why? Why do a lot of people only like talking about al-amr al-ma'ruf and they don't like al-nahy an al-munkar? Al-amr al-ma'ruf doesn't get you enemies. Enjoying the good doesn't get you enemies. When you tell people, when you advise them, the Prophet ﷺ advised us to pray, for example, 2 rak'at when the sun comes up and you get this much hasanat, is anyone going to have a problem with that? No one has a problem. When you tell someone, when a baby is born, what's good is that we do a aqiqah for them, for the boy 2 sheep and for the girl 1 sheep. Anyone have a problem with that? No one has a problem. When do people get upset with the da'i? When it comes to an-nahy an al-munkar. When it comes to them prohibiting the evil. Because that affects me and my personality. It affects me and my character. It affects me and my whims and desires. And that's what I don't want. I don't want anyone to tell me that I'm not allowed to listen to music. I don't want anyone to tell me that the path I'm on is going to take me to the hellfire. I don't want anyone to tell me that I need to change my ways. I don't want anyone to tell me that I'm wrong in the way I treat my wife or my husband or my children. I don't want anyone to tell me these things. I want to be hur. I want to be free to do as I please, when I please. And so that's why a lot of people, they do not like the ones who forbid the evil. As for the ones who tell them to do good, then they have no problem with these people. Because it doesn't affect them. It doesn't affect them. If you are a da'i to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your job is to follow the da'wah of the anbiya. To follow the da'wah of the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And their job was simply to enjoin the good and forbid the evil according to what Allah Azza wa Jalla legislated. That's why the prophets, they were kicked out of their towns. They were kicked out of their cities. Some of them were killed. Some of them were threatened. They went through an extremely hard time. Because they enjoyed the good only? No. But because they forbade the evil. A lot of du'at today, a lot of people that call to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala today, because of this reality, you find all of their da'wah is only about enjoying the good. That's all their da'wah. And so they become famous and they become popular and people like them. And then people say, Wallah, hada shaykh ma fi mithlo. But what did you actually benefit from that person? Not much. The only thing is, you like him because what he says goes in lines with your whims and desires. And so a lot of da'is take that approach because it's easy in da'wah and they get popular very quickly. Our job is not to worry about what the people think of us, but what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala thinks of us. And that means following the path of the Anbiya, which means enjoying the good and forbidding the evil. Continue. Uthman. Come.
What is the definition or what are the limits of the Prophet's saying, if he is not able to? I ask this because many people apply only the last part of the hadith, that is, hating an evil with the heart. Here is the meaning of able to. If one is able to remove an evil with his hand, then he must remove it with his hand. For example, if you see someone with a musical instrument and if you are able to take it and break it, then you must do so. But if only those in authority are allowed to take such a step. Then you must move on to the second level, changing the evil with your tongue. You can only do this by inviting the man to break the forbidden instrument himself. Or you can refer the matter to one who has authority, one who is able, because of his authority, to break the instrument. If you are not able to do this, even this, then the last level of changing evil is to change it with your heart. This means that you hate and despise the evil action and that you do not sit with one while he is perpetrating it.
This hadith is a golden hadith when it comes to da'wah. Whoever of you sees an evil, من رأى منكم منكرا فليغيره بيده. Let him change it with his hand. فإن لم يستطع, if he's unable. And unable means here physically or for other means. Some people may not be able to do something physically, na'am, and so he's considered unable. Other people, they're able to do something physically, but because of other reasons, it could be considered illegal, could be considered unacceptable, it could lead to a bigger issue, etc. And so they're able to physically, but for other reasons they're not able. Also, that person is considered to be unable to do so. Like in wudu, فَإِن لَمْ تَجِدُوا مَاءً. Allah says, if you don't find water, فَتَيَمَّمُوا, then do tayammum. Then let's say a person has the whole ocean in front of him, but he's got burns on his hands and his face. Does he do tayammum? He can't. The water is going to make it worse. So even though the water, the ocean is right in front of him, he's unable to use the water. He's unable to use the water. Sorry, to do wudu. Jazakallah khairan. That's why I need Sulaiman in the back now. That coffee wasn't strong enough. Adnan ordered me one, I don't know what he told the person to do. He didn't do his job. Jazakallah khairan, Adnan. If a person is unable to do wudu, Jazakallah khairan. فَإِنَّ تَجِدُوا مَاءً فَتَيَمَّمُوا. If you don't find water, then do tayammum. And this person, if he's got the ocean in front of him, but he's got burns on his body, can he use the water to make wudu? He can't, because it's going to make it worse. It's going to make it worse. So what does he do? Okay, he'll go to water. Does he fall under the ones that can't find water? Obviously he's found water, but he can't use it. Same thing, a lot of people have a misunderstanding when it comes to change it with your hand. And if you're unable to, then with your tongue. A lot of people think, la, khalas, the fact that you can physically means you have to change it with your hand. And this is incorrect. This is incorrect. There's hikmah in da'wah. As we've spoken about the whole first half of the book, there's hikmah in da'wah, there's steps in da'wah, there's things which are appropriate and inappropriate when it comes to da'wah. And sometimes you may be able to do something physically, but it's not the time, it's not the place, you don't have authority over it, it's going to lead to a bigger problem. It may be illegal and put the spotlight on the Muslims unnecessarily, etc. So in these cases, you go on to the next level. فَإِن لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِيَدِهِ فَبِلِسَانِهِ, with his hand, with his tongue. This person gives da'wah now. This person enjoins the good and forbids the evil. This person tries his best to encourage the person to do that which is Islamically correct. The person tries to place the love of Allah and the fear of Allah in the person's heart so that they can be upright in and of themselves. Yani you give da'wah. You give da'wah. فَإِن لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ. If you're unable to do that, again, not because you don't have a tongue that you can't speak. The vast majority of people, alhamdulillah, they're able to speak. When the Prophet ﷺ mentioned فَإِن لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ, it's not that you can't speak. No. But again, just like physically, you're able to do it, but there may be other things and reasons which make it inappropriate for you to use your hand. Same thing in these times, it may be inappropriate for you to use your tongue. Maybe it's not the time, maybe it's not the place, maybe it's going to lead to a bigger problem, etc. فَإِن لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِقَلْبِهِ وَذَلِكَ ضَعْفُ الْإِيمَانِ. If you're unable, then in your heart, and that's the weakest of Iman. What does it mean to hate the evil with your heart, to change the evil with your heart? That you know it's wrong and you hate it, you dislike it. You, for example, you're driving now and you see sisters inappropriately dressed. You see sisters inappropriately dressed. You're driving past, you can't get out and put a hijab on her. And maybe it's not the time or place for you to go and physically speak to her. The bare minimum is that you hate it in your heart. You know it's wrong and you dislike the action. And if you're able to remove yourself from that environment. And as we'll see, there are a lot of people, and the Shaykh will speak about it, there are a lot of people who remain in the haram and say, oh, I dislike it with my heart, and this is incorrect. If you truly dislike it with your heart, then you remove yourself from that environment, and that'll come with us, inshallah.
But here we come to an issue that many people are ignorant about. Some people sit with a sinner while he is sinning and they say his sin is upon him. This is not true. Rather, it is incumbent upon us to use the three said means, removing evil with our hands, our tongues, or with our heart. It is obvious that if one hates a deed with his heart, it is not possible for him to bear sitting with someone who is in the act of perpetrating that deed. So if you find yourself in such a situation, you should stand up and leave, submitting to the saying of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Before the ayah, you understand what the Shaykh is saying? The Shaykh is saying, if you truly dislike something with your heart, then you're going to do something to change it. If you truly dislike something with your heart, you're going to get up and change it. You don't say, Wallah, I hate this thing and I'm upset with this thing and I don't like it. But you say, Wallah, I'm going to stay here anyway. No. The only reason you stay with something that you don't like is if you have no choice. I have no choice. But when I have a choice, no, I get up and I change it. I get up and I change it. A person's wearing a shirt that smells. He's wearing a shirt that smells. If he says, Wallahi, my shirt smells. What a disgusting smell that's coming from my shirt. And he's at home and he's got another 50 shirts in his drawer. What does he do? He takes his shirt off and he puts a new shirt on. Simple. I don't like it, I change it because I'm able to. Tayyib, does he stay sitting in that shirt that smells? It means it's not that bad to you. Even though it might smell bad to you, it's not that bad. You accept it. Why? Because your actions speak louder than your words. You had the opportunity to get rid of that smell, but you lived with it. It's not an issue to you. It didn't force you. That hate didn't force you to get up and to do anything about it. Same thing with the haram. If a person's in an environment of haram says, Wallah, I know it's haram and it's bad and I wish the people would get better. Then, okay, you in this situation, are you able yourself to get up and to leave that situation? To leave that environment? If the answer is yes, then you're not truthful to your words. If the answer is yes, I can get up and I can leave, it means you don't hate it enough to do anything about it. You may disagree with it, but not enough to do something about it. This is what the Shaykh is saying. If you truly dislike that situation, then you get up and leave. A lot of people, for example, when it comes to family gatherings, there may be haram, there may be sometimes major sins being committed. Let's say weddings. Let's say there's a wedding that's got music and intermingling and people dressed inappropriately and dancing, etc., etc., etc. And a person says, Wallah, I'm going to the wedding and it's haram and I know it's haram and I wish I could do something about it. The bare minimum that you can do is what? Not attend. That's the bare minimum. What's going to happen if you don't attend? Wallah, nas hayihku alayhi. No problem. The people are going to speak about me. Tayyib, you prefer Allah's angry with you than the people being angry with you? Like, this is not something that goes into the mind or the heart of the believer. The believer understands, I can do something about it, I'm going to remove myself. From the ayah.
وقد نزل عليكم في الكتاب أن إذا سمعتم آيات الله يكفر بها ويستهزأ بها فلا تقعدوا معهم حتى يخوضوا في حديث غيره إنكم إذا مثلهم. And it has already been revealed to you in the book, this Quran, that when you hear the verses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being denied and mocked at, then sit not with them until they engage in a talk other than that. But if you stayed with them, certainly in that case you would be like them.
This is the part. Allah Azza wa Jalla is telling the people that sit with the people that talk badly about the religion. They mock the religion, they lie about Allah Azza wa Jalla, they lie about the Sharia, etc. Don't sit with these people. Don't sit with these people until they change their words. Once they change, once they stop the haram, ahlan sit with them. But if they're sitting and they're talking bad about the religion, they're mocking the religion, etc., and you're sitting with them, this is a sign of what? That your heart accepts what they're saying. That's why Allah subhanahu says, if you stay with them, then you are like them. You are like them. All it has to do with your ability. Could you change it with your hand? Wallah, I can't change it with my hand. Can you change it with your tongue? Wallah, I can't change it with my tongue. Okay, the bare minimum is that you change it with your heart by getting up and leaving because you know it's wrong. But if Allah, you choose to stay there by choice, you're not forced to stay there, there's no harm in you leaving, you want to stay there, then this makes you just like those people because you accepted it with the ability of moving.
If one is sitting with a man who is in the process of perpetrating a sin, he is participating with him in that sin, even though he might not be perpetrating it himself. The only exception to this general principle is one who is coerced to sit with the sinner, in which case he is excused.
Coerced means that he's forced. Unless you're forced to sit with the sinner, then you don't have a choice. Masalan, a young boy, for example, he tells you, Wallah, my parents, they do haram. My mom does haram in the car, masalan. She listens to music in the car. My dad listens to music in the car. And he's a young boy. He says, Shaykh, Wallah, I try and tell my mom and my dad that it's haram, but they force me to listen to the music when we're on our way to our cousin's house. Or what am I going to jump out of the car? Obviously, this person is forced. He's a young boy, he doesn't have a choice. Jayyid, unless you have an excuse, you're not allowed to sit with those that commit sin. When we say those that commit sin, we're not talking about everyone individual that commits sin. Everyone commits haram. كل ابن آدم خطاء. We're talking about they're committing this sin in front of you. They're committing this sin in front of you. It's a place of sin. It's a place of haram. These are the ones that you're not allowed to sit with. Why? Because you sitting with them are showing them that you accept that wrong. And this is one of the reasons the ulama of Bani Israel were cursed. Because كانوا لا يتناهون عن منكر فعلوه. They used to not prevent the people from committing sin. بالعكس, they used to actually, as some of the ulama said, they used to commit the haram with them by trying to make it left and right halal. Left and right, yani from here or from here, they would make it halal for them. And this led them to be cursed. When the people of haram see that the people of goodness, they're sitting with them and they're accepting them, what ends up happening? The ta'zeem of the haram becomes less in their hearts. Them making the haram, wallah, it's a big thing we need to stay away from. It becomes less in the haram and they accept it. How many times you hear, Ya Ammi, this is haram, why are you doing it? Then they say, Ya Ammi, the Sheikh Fulan does it, or the Sheikh's wife does it, or the Sheikh's sister does it, or the Sheikh's son does it. Yani, okay, what's the Sheikh's son or sister? I'm telling you Quran or Sunnah. What's the Sheikh himself? No one has an excuse to change the Sharia because of the actions of a person. But what they're trying to say is, other people accept it. Other people accept it and they use them as an excuse that if they accept it or they do it, it means it's probably not that bad. And unfortunately, as religious people, this is one of our weaknesses, that we have made the haram acceptable to others even if we don't do it. We've accepted it for others. And this is very bad. And this is very wrong. How many times you see, for example, a mother walking in the shopping center, mashallah, fully proper hijab, but her daughter, yani Allah musta'an. Yani her belly is showing and her cleavage is showing and her legs are all showing. Tayyib. Ya hajji, no problem. You can't make your daughter wear the hijab, no problem. But don't go in the shopping center with your daughter and parade her. No. Show your daughter that I'm upset with this fa'al. I'm upset with this fa'al. And so I'm leaving without you. You go do whatever you want to do. But for you to make it, wallah, my mom accepts me however I am. Like, this is not how it should be. This is not how it should be. Or sometimes there's a person who openly commits sins and is openly corrupt person in the family, and we azzumu. We make him, wallah, the head of the majlis, and we praise him and we talk highly about him to everyone. And we know that he's, for example, a person who from top to bottom is full of haram. We should not, if we say, wallah, I know he's wrong and I wouldn't do it, that's one thing. But also we should not make him feel comfortable in the haram that he does. We shouldn't make him feel comfortable in the haram that he does. Imagine we were to implement some of the ways of forbidding the evil by, for example, not accepting the money or eating from the food of the one who we know his wealth is from haram. Like, let's say a person who works in a financial institute which is based on haram, like works in a bank, for example, that's haram. And so his income is haram. Or a person who we know, for example, he made all of his wealth from, for example, the lottery. He's a gambler. Imagine these people were to say, Jazakallah khairan for your offer, but we apologize, we're not going to accept. Imagine the effect that would have from a society on these individuals, that they're not accepted. That they're not accepted. This would have a profound effect. And they wouldn't feel comfortable in committing the haram. Because as human beings, we need the acceptance of the society. That's why it's hard to go against the societal norms. That's why Islam will go back to being something strange. Because the people will be corrupt. And naturally, as human beings, we want to be accepted by people. And so when we go against what the people are doing, it feels hard on our nafs. It's hard on our nafs. The same thing with the people that commit haram. If they were the ones that we looked at as, sorry, us getting involved with you is not appropriate. You want to come for a visit, ahlan wa sahlan. You want to come to our gatherings, ahlan wa sahlan. But for me to take from your wealth, for me to take from your wealth, or to accept your gift, or your donation, or to eat from your food, this is something that I am going to stay away from. Because I know that the income is from haram. I'm not saying do it. I'm saying, imagine if as a society, this is what would happen against these people. They wouldn't feel comfortable in committing the haram that they commit. Unfortunately, what happens is the opposite. We make them feel that khalas, everything is okay, everything is acceptable, and there's no problem in doing what they do, and this just leads to them increasing in haram because the people have accepted it. Continue.
the Muslim stance vis-a-vis sins that are widespread in the lands of the Muslims. Number 56. What should the stance of a Muslim be vis-a-vis many sins that have become widespread in Muslim lands? Sins such as usury, the indecent attire of some women, the abandonment of prayer, and so on. The Prophet ﷺ clarified the stance of a Muslim vis-a-vis sins when he ﷺ said, "Whosoever from you sees an evil, then let him change it with his hands. If he is not able to, then with his tongue. And if he is not able to, then with his heart. And this last one is the weakest level of Iman."
This hadith has a lot of rahmah in it. This hadith has a lot of rahmah in it for us. Because we want to be good, we want to be upright, and we also want everyone else to be good and upright. And so it hurts us, and it really affects us when we see people, they're not doing that which is appropriate Islamically. But from the rahmah of Islam and from the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that the qudra has been placed. The istita'a. Are you able to do anything about it? Are you able to change it? And to what ability? That's what Allah Azza wa Jalla is going to hold you accountable for. Our job, dear brothers, is not to go and change the world. That's not our job. Our job is to try. Our job is to try. But as we always say, our job is to work and to leave the results up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You go and you see the haram. If you can change it with your hand, change it. But out of rahmah for us, Allah Azza wa Jalla made it. If you're unable, then with your tongue. If you're unable, out of rahmah for you. If you're unable, then with your heart, and that's the weakest of Iman. This hadith, there's a lot of rahmah in it. Especially when we live in societies that are full of haram. There's almost not one corner that you turn, except that you see major sins being committed. Whether it's in our direct families or our extended families, our friends, our school, our colleagues, wherever it may be. There's haram all over the place. What's our job? What's our responsibility as Muslims? To give da'wah to the best of our ability. That's our job. That's our duty. And that's what Allah Azza will hold you accountable for. According to your ability. According to your ability. In this, there's a lot of rahmah for us.
So based on this hadith, changing or removing evil occurs on 3 levels. Number 1, changing evil with your hand. If you have authority and ability whereby it is possible for you to change an evil with your hand, do so. For example, an evil is perpetrated in your home and you are the head of the household. In this situation, you are able to change the evil with your hand.
Continue.
Suppose a man enters his house, the house is his. The children and wife that live in the house are his, and finds a musical instrument. He can change the evil with his hands, for instance, by breaking the instrument because he is able to do so.
When you have the authority and ability, to do so, it's your, for example, workplace, and you walked in and the workers, for example, they put on a music channel. Yeah, it's your workplace. You can go and get the remote and change it. That's easy. That's your ability. You walked into your house and your children are watching something inappropriate on the iPad. You have the opportunity to take that and to remove that. Naam. So if you have the authority and the ability to do so, then you change it with your hand. Then you change it with your hand. Don't say, I can't. Change it with your hand. My advice for the brothers, especially those that are living in Australia, or in Western countries in general, and even Muslim countries, is to make sure that when you raise your children, make sure they understand the halal from the haram, why this is halal and why this is haram, and what the ultimate outcomes will be. Why? Because if they don't, it's not in your house, outside of the house, they're going to have a lot of opportunity to do haram. So you don't want you to be the person that khalas, everything is haram, 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 and then they're going to go and do the haram outside anyway. What we need to do as parents is to do our best to educate our children that yes, I'm going to stop you from watching this, but why am I going to stop you from watching it? I'm going to stop you from this, I'm not going to allow this in my house. Why aren't I going to allow it in my house? That's one. Number 2, what are the ultimate effects of this? Yani, if you have a young boy, he's not going to understand that listening to music now is going to lead to bad later. But let's say you have teenagers. You have teenagers, 12, 13, 14 years old. These teenagers and a little bit before, they understand a lot of the things that happen in reality. Guy told him, Habibi, all of these musical songs, all of these songs, what are they talking about? Wallah, he kissed me and he touched me and he took me here and she took me there and I used this and I used that and I ended up here and ma ba'arif sure. Tell him, are these things, when you hear it every single day multiple times, Are they going to teach you, mashallah, pray tahajjud and make sure you make dua in your sujood and make sure you focus in your salah about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Or they're going to lead people to commit haram and zina and drugs, etc. They'll understand. Tell them this is the trap of the shaitan. Don't tell me if a song has a good meaning. What song has a good meaning? Yani 1 or 2 out of the billion that are out there. If you listen to a good, if you listen to a song with a good meaning, you heard it for 5 minutes and then that stopped. And then for the next 3-4 hours, all you done was listen music about things that are corrupt. These people, the children, they understand. The children, they understand. But you need to sit and educate. If you just try and stop it, they're just going to look at you like, okay, in your presence, I won't do it. But outside, they'll do it, unfortunately. That was the second point. The third point, and this is part of dealing with human beings, part of human nature. Give them an alternative. Give them an alternative. It's very important that when we raise children, especially in these societies, that we give them an alternative. When you stop something, you have to swap it with something else. You don't want them to listen to music, jayyid. You don't want them to watch bad movies, jayyid. You don't want them to go with bad friends, jayyid. No problem. But what have you provided for them in terms of good and fun and enjoyment? These are school holidays. A lot of parents, they have big problems in school holidays. I don't want my kids to do the haram, but I want them to sit at home. How long are they going to draw for? How long are they going to go play in the garden for? No problem. They're 5, 6 years old, 7 years old. You can do that all day, no problem. But when they're teenagers, what are they going to do? How is he going to be a man? How is he going to learn? All of his friends are doing haram. What's he going to do? How is he going to change? How is he going to learn? How is he going to grow? How is he going to mature? You go as a father, go and teach him. Go spend big money if you need to. Go buy your son all the fishing gear in the world and yallah, bismillah. Go take him fishing. Let him get something as a good hobby. Go buy a $1,000, $2,000 car. Go to someone's farm and go teach your son how to drive. Go on an adventure. Go on a hike. Go on a bushwalk. Take him to places. Take him to a museum. Take him to an aquarium. Take him hunting. You go and take your child and do stuff with them. Teach them that there are many ways how to have fun and to enjoy yourself without needing to do the haram. There are many ways. There are many ways. Enroll them in all of these. Any programs, alhamdulillah, school holiday programs, wallah, we're so blessed here, especially in Sydney. We have so many school holiday programs, especially for the young ones. So many school holiday programs. Go and put your children in them. Someone complains, oh, wallah, it's $100. Ya ammi, when we get out for dinner, we spend $200. Go for your child's deen, spend $1,000. Who cares? It's for their deen. The shoes that you're wearing cost you $230. And you're complaining that for your child's deen, for him to learn a surah of Quran, and to learn about the Prophet ﷺ, and to love the salah, and to love the masjid, and to love the sheikh, you're complaining that it's costed you $100? Why? Why are you stingy when it comes to goodness? Why are you stingy when it comes to goodness? Go and spend money and let your children enjoy. Your daughters, go and enjoy it with them as a father. Go and make your life enjoyable for your children. And you show them the halal alternatives. But unfortunately, we don't want to do that, and so we continue to have problems in parenting. We don't want to put in the effort, and we don't want them to do the haram. And so we have children that they're good in front of you, and then they're, ayathan billah, shayateen outside. Why? Because they were never raised, they were never educated. They never had the intestinal fortitude, as they say, to be a believer. It was never instilled in them. In front of you, they play you. And then when they're with their friends, they're the ones who they learn off. And this is not what we want as parents. This is not how we're taught as parents, Islamically. Let us instill goodness in them by leading the way.
Number 2, changing evil with your tongue. If you are not able to remove an evil with your hand, you then move on to the second level, which is removing it with your tongue. This can be done in 2 ways. You can say to the perpetrator of the sin, desist from this evil, so you can speak to him, and if the situation calls for it, you can reapproach him. Reproach him, or if you cannot even speak to him, you can convey his wrongdoing to those in authority.
This is now, if you see someone doing haram, whether it's adult children, especially adult children, or it's outside, and it's appropriate for you to give da'wah, then give da'wah. As we said, بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة. with wisdom and using good words. Now, good admonishment. Speak to the person, explain to the person, invite the person to goodness, forbid them from evil in a good way, in a nice way. Don't try and, as we mentioned, grab him by the shirt straight away, and who do you think you are, and why doing it, and do you want to go to Jahannam, and don't you love Allah, and are you truly a believer, and then, don't do that. Straight away at least, especially if you know it's not going to work. At the beginning, there needs to be ease, there needs to be goodness, there needs to be niceness, there needs to be mahabbah. You need to make sure that you have ikhlas when you give the person da'wah. You need to make sure you're trying to bring them closer to Allah, not to yourself, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're acting on behalf of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you need to use the best approach possible. This is between you and that person initially. Then, like the things, they need to get a bit more, a bit more direct, etc. That's a different story. But initially, all of our da'wah should be with a rifq, be with ease, be with kindness, as a hadith inshallah will come with us today. Na'am. As for those who straight away they go to being harsh and rough, then this is not the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You give advice. You give advice to the person. Again, your job is not to change him. Your job is to give the message. Your job is not to change. Your job is to give the message. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam spent 13 years in Mecca. 13 years in Mecca. The whole of Mecca didn't become Muslim. But that's not the job of the Prophet ﷺ. The job of the Prophet ﷺ is to continue to convey. Nuh alayhi salam, 950 years he gave da'wah. 950 years. And according to some narrations, only 80 something people became Muslim. Imagine. That's less than one person every how many years? Wallahu musta'an. But what's his job? His job is to continue to give da'wah. That's his job. And that's what he done. And that's our job, to constantly and continually remind the people. Again, in a beneficial way. If you know that your da'wah with your words is going to lead to something worse or push someone away more, don't say, Wallah, no, I'm giving him da'wah, I have to with my tongue. No, we said if you can't, means if you can't speak, or there's other things that stop you from giving that person da'wah with your tongue, especially if it's going to make the situation worse. And if you have a son, and he's in his teen years, so now his age now is to rebel. And you know that he's got a problem with the salah. Don't say, khalas, I can't get up and I can't hear him anymore. I need to give him advice. Don't say, did you pray dhuhr? No? Alright. 2 minutes later, did you pray dhuhr? 2 minutes later, did you pray dhuhr? 2 minutes later, did you pray dhuhr? That child is going to hate you and he's going to hate salat al-dhuhr. Because of your approach. Don't think that just you speaking is how to give da'wah. Bil hikmah. What's wisdom? To make sure you use that which is appropriate for that time. That's going to make it worse. That's going to push him away more. So this is, with that person, sometimes you need to remind. Khalas. You reminded him, you told him, maybe in an hour's time, maybe you find a different approach. Maybe you don't speak to him at all. Again, all of this will come inshallah. Maybe you don't speak to him at all. But you have to choose the best approach with a person. Not just physically, but also verbally. Number 3.
Number 3, changing evil with your heart. When you cannot change evil, neither with your hand nor with your tongue, then you must reject it with your heart. And this is the weakest level of Iman. This level requires from you that you hate the evil that is being perpetrated, you hate the fact that it exists, and you wish that it did not. Here is an important point to consider. The Prophet ﷺ pointed it out in the hadith when he ﷺ said, "Whosoever from you sees." Does seeing here refer to actual sight? Does it refer to sure knowledge? Or does it refer to something that one is not absolutely sure about, but is more than 50% sure about? As for the last question, the answer is no, because it is not permissible to have evil thoughts about a Muslim. What remains then is actual sight and sure knowledge. The former refers to one who actually sees another person perpetrating a sin, and the latter occurs when one hears the sin being perpetrated. If he cannot see, or when someone he trusts informs him.
When it comes to enjoying the good and forbidding the evil, you don't automatically assume the worst, unless you have very good reason to assume bad of a person. And this again happens a lot with parenting. Unless you have very good reason to suspect bad of your brother, then don't automatically assume that he's committing zina and he's a drug dealer and the person is doing fraud. La. Assume good in them. And a lot of parents, they'll tell you that I tried talking about the negative points of my child. You never pray, you never talk nice, you have bad akhlaq. And they said it didn't work. That actually made it worse. So if you always are focusing on the negative points with people, especially your children, then a lot of the time that's going to lead them to get further away from you. Because there's nothing pleasant that comes from you. They don't want to be around you. They don't want to see you. But sometimes when you use a positive way, when you use a positive way, that wallah, you done that and mashallah, I'm very proud of you. Some parents have never said once to their child that wallah, I'm proud of you. Na'am. They've never made one day in their child's life happy for them. When you sometimes show that positive way, instead of saying wallah khalas, let's go to the masjid, anta ma btahab Allah, you never want to get to his houses, maybe say ta'al, let's go out as a family, yalla, let's go out and eat. We'll go pray Isha first and then we'll go eat, for example. We'll go pray Dhuhr first and then you're getting him to get to the masjid and there's positivity behind it. That child's gonna usually become a lot more receptive to that positivity than the negativity. And so we need to be extremely mindful when it comes to our words, how it affects a person. Man ra'a minkum munkar, whoever sees an evil. So the asl is that you don't think bad of your brother, you think good. And so it's only if you see him do wrong, that's when you go and say, Abdurrahman, Nasim, Muhammad, this was not appropriate, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But to automatically assume the worst and always talk about negative points in their life, then this is something that we should stay away from. Because the asl is husn al-dhan. And that shouldn't change with our families. Rather, we should have more husn al-dhan with our families because they're the closest to us and unfortunately many a time the most sensitive.
What becomes clear to us from this hadith is that the Messenger ﷺ did not want us to hasten to arrive at a judgment against a person until we see him doing an evil action. Whosoever from you sees an evil, then let him change it with his hand. If he is not able to, then with his tongue. And if he is not able to, then with his heart. Some people have asked me, I sit with people as they are committing a sin, but I hate that sin and reject it with my heart. In this situation, am I myself sinning or not? One person said, I make Allah bear witness that I hate this evil and I despise it in my heart. Our response to him is, you have not rejected it with your heart, for had your heart rejected it, your limbs would have rejected it as well. That is, you would have physically removed yourself from the evil. The Prophet ﷺ said, truly in the body there is a mudghah, a piece or part. If it is well, then the entire body becomes well. But if it is corrupted, then the entire body becomes corrupted. Truly it is the heart.
The heart is as I said, like the king, and the limbs are the soldiers. If the heart truly doesn't like it, it's going to move away from it. The limbs will follow. Your limbs, your body will also remove. It's off away from the haram. But if you are content in sitting with that person that's sinning, then it's a sign that also your heart is content with that sin.
Suppose that your heart despises a deed. It is possible for you to bear sitting with those. Is it possible for you to bear sitting with those who are in the act of doing it? Of course not. Which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said,
before the ayah again, this is not the Shaykh repeating himself, these are different fatwa. For the ones that are new to the book, these are fatwa from the Shaykh and answers to questions that he was asked. So at times you find the same hadith repeated or the same ayah repeated because they're 4 different questions that were compiled by the students of the Shaykh.
وَقَدْ نَزَّلَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الْكِتَابِ أَنْ إِذَا سَمِعْتُمْ آيَاتِ اللَّهِ يُكْفَرُ بِهَا وَيُسْتَهْزَأُ بِهَا فَلَا تَقْعُدُوا مَعَهُمْ حَتَّى يَخُوضُوا فِي حَدِيثٍ غَيْرِهِ إِنَّكُمْ إِذًا مِثْلُهُمْ. And it has already been revealed to you in the book, this Quran, that when you hear the verses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being denied and mocked at, then sit not with them until they engage in a talk other than that. But if you stayed with them, certainly in that case you would be like them. Some people among the masses think that by hating an evil act that is being perpetrated in their presence, they are executing the Prophet's command in his saying, if he is not able to, then with his heart. Of course, they are gravely mistaken. Rather, as I have explained, one who rejects and hates a matter cannot, not realistically and not according to the principles of the Sharia, remain in a place wherein it is being perpetrated. One lies when one says, I hate this evil, when all the while he is sitting with people who are in the act of perpetrating it. Some people have said to me, if you say that, then it consequently becomes forbidden to sit with those who have shaved their beards, because shaving one's beard is an evil deed. We answer, there are two distinct matters involved here.
This is what happens when a person, when they've lost any Shara'i excuse and reply, they start to clutch at straws, as they say. Now, a person when he's drowning, what does he try and do? He waves his hand and he tries to grab even the air. Doesn't he know that air is not going to benefit him? You're not going to be able to hold on to air. But when you're desperate, you try and hold on to anything. And unfortunately, a lot of people, when it comes to replying and trying to prove their point Islamically, they end up falling into some of these silly mistakes. Yani the Sheikh, when he's telling the people, if people are committing a haram, you're not allowed to sit with them. There are always exceptions, but the general rule is that if people are committing a haram in your presence, you're not allowed to sit with them until you remove yourself, because that would be the best and most appropriate thing, generally speaking, to do. So some people reply back to the Sheikh, shaving is haram. So if someone shaves, you're not allowed to sit with that person. The Sheikh's going to reply, but these are the types of silly arguments that people make.
There are two distinct matters involved here. One, actually doing an evil deed. Two, the effects of doing an evil deed. When you see a man doing evil, you should prevent him according to the said three levels. And if he still does not desist, then you must not sit with him, because changing an evil with one's heart involves you not sitting with him. But what if you come across a people who have perpetrated the sin, and though they are finished doing it, its effects remain visible on them? Is it permissible for you to sit with them? Yes, you may sit with them, because what you witness is not the evil itself, but its effects or signs. Therefore, you must make the distinction between those who are in the act of performing evil and between those upon whom you can see traces of evil deeds. Do not sit with those who shave their beards while they are actually shaving, but you may sit with them after they have shaved. At the same time, however, do not lose the opportunity, if possible, to advise them. After all, you do see the traces of their evil deed. We advise them because doing so comes under ordering to what is good and forbidding what is evil. Similarly, you may sit with a person from whose mouth you smell cigarette smoke. There is no harm in sitting with him, but you should advise him to quit. But if he is in the act of smoking a cigarette, do not sit with him. Otherwise, you will be his partner in his sin.
You understand the difference, Shabab? There's a difference between a person who's committing a haram at that time, as you're sitting, is committing the haram. That person you're not allowed to sit and make feel comfortable regarding the sin that he's committed. But another person who they've already done the haram, can you sit with that person? Yes. Are you in any way, shape or form affirming the haram that they've done or making them feel comfortable in the haram that they committed? No. And you give them general da'wah. But these are the effects of the sin. These are the effects of the sin. You're not making the person feel comfortable in the sin that he's committing. One of the other very common excuses along the sort that people use is, for example, weddings. When they say, what's the difference if there's music? You go and you just eat. Don't get up and do the haram. You go to the wedding and sit on your table, don't do anything. Like when you get to a restaurant. When you get to a restaurant, a lot of the time they have music in the background, or they have music on in the restaurant, and all you're doing is singing and eating. Is that haram? We say the two, they're very different. They're very different, and I know haram, a lot of people, they've had the same excuse given to them by their families, and some people have actually gone because they said, wallah, ma'ak ha. No, ma'adak ha. There's a big difference. When you get to a restaurant, going and eating at a restaurant, is the place halal? Yes or no? And is it the action of you going and eating in a restaurant, halal or haram? Halal. Tayyib, you going and partaking in a wedding which is haram. The wedding itself is haram. You going and partaking in a wedding which is haram. Is that halal or haram? That's haram. One place the asr is that it's halal. This place the asr is that it's haram. So there's two completely different things. Secondly, when you go to a restaurant and the person has music on, Are you giving the person the tick of approval that what you're doing, oh صاحب المطعم, that you don't even know, and the صاحب المطعم, what you're doing is okay? You're not doing that. Your presence has nothing to do with the person accepting or not accepting music. If you can advise, let's say it's a Muslim, and you can advise him, then yes, advise. And I told this to others because he can take it as accepting. There are some brothers, and there's some brothers that know, there's some brothers that don't. Let's say you go to his restaurant and he's got something haram there, music or whatever it may be. If you know the owner, and you know that you can advise him, then advise him. Because that falls under enjoying the good and forbidding the evil. But if you go to a restaurant, he's a non-Muslim, or you don't know the owner, and there's no chance aslan for you to advise because you don't know anyone there in authority, and you went and ate there, are you showing in any way, shape or form your acceptance? No. But when you go to a Muslim's wedding, and it's your brother or your sister or your cousin or a relative or a family friend, you go, they're the ones committing the haram. And so when you go, you are accepting the haram that they're committing. Just like we said, if you know the owner of the restaurant or you can advise him, then advise him. The same thing over here. One was halal to go to, this one's haram to go to in the first place. But then even when you go, you are making them feel that, wallah, I'm not doing that bad. Whatever I'm doing, it's not that bad because these people are there and they're here to support me. And they're accepting what I've done. And if it was that bad, they wouldn't have come in the first place. They're two very different things. Jayyid. Unfortunately, as we mentioned, when a person wants to do haram, they'll drown in it. So part of our job on top of knowing how to discuss the halal and haram aspect is also how to explain to people why what is haram, especially when it comes to those who have weaker iman, who even though they know it's haram, they want to continue. Sometimes you need to come through other avenues such as rationale or the dunyawi effects of such actions. Inshallah, we'll stop here and we'll continue next week with al-rifq, being soft in your approach and your words when giving da'wah. هذا والله أعلم صلى الله عليه وسلم محمد وعلى آل محمد وصحبه أجمعين. Any questions, brother?